I am Theresa, 67, a retired nurse and proud grandmother of 3 beautiful children. For 15 years since my husband passed, I have hosted our family Christmas dinner, complete with my famous apple pie that everyone looks forward to. But this year, I forgot the dessert in all the chaos of preparation. When my daughter-in-law Amanda stood up and called me a useless old woman in front of everyone, something inside me finally snapped. I stood up and simply said the truth she never wanted to hear. Before I continue my story, where are you watching from today? Hit the like and subscribe buttons if you've ever had to stand up to a disrespectful family member, and let me know if you would have handled it differently. My son Michael has always been the light of my life. Even as a child, he had the kindest heart, always putting others first and avoiding conflicts whenever possible. When he introduced me to Amanda 8 years ago, I was thrilled to see him so happy. She was outwardly charming with a bright smile and polished appearance. She came from a wealthy family and clearly had expensive taste, but I never imagined that would become an issue. They dated for 3 years before getting married in a lavish ceremony that I later learned Michael could barely afford. Amanda's parents had threatened to cut her off financially if she married Michael, claiming he wasn't of their social standing, despite his successful career as a software engineer. I thought it was terrible, but I kept my opinions to myself. After all, it wasn't my place to interfere in their relationship. In the beginning, Amanda and I got along wonderfully. She would come over for coffee, ask for cooking advice, and seemed genuinely interested in becoming part of our family. I was touched when she asked me to help plan their wedding, and I poured my heart into making it special for them. But looking back, I see now that the cracks were already forming. After the wedding, things began to change. Amanda's parents followed through on their threat and stopped supporting her financially. Suddenly, the designer clothes and expensive vacations she was accustomed to were out of reach on Michael's salary alone. I started noticing small comments about how modest our family gatherings were compared to what she grew up with. When they struggled to make the down payment on their first house, I offered to help. It wasn't easy for me, but I withdrew $30,000 from my retirement savings. Michael was grateful, but Amanda acted as if it was expected. There was no thank you note, no acknowledgement of the sacrifice. Instead, she complained that the house wasn't in her preferred neighborhood. 2 years later, Jacob was born, followed by Emma 2 years after that. My beautiful grandchildren became the new center of my world. I volunteered to watch them whenever needed, which became increasingly frequent as Amanda discovered a passion for shopping trips and spa days that could last entire weekends. I never complained. Those precious hours with my grandchildren were worth any inconvenience or pain in my arthritic knees from chasing after toddlers. The financial requests continued. When their car broke down, I loaned them money for a new one. When childcare costs became overwhelming, I not only provided free babysitting, but also contributed to their monthly expenses. Michael always promised to pay me back, but Amanda would quickly dismiss those conversations with comments like, "That's what family is for, right?" All the while, her behavior toward me grew increasingly disrespectful. She would make subtle comments about the outdated way I dressed or how my house needed updating. She would correct me in front of others if I misremembered a detail, making sure everyone noticed my senior moment. When I would share stories about Michael's childhood, she would roll her eyes or check her phone, making it clear my memories weren't worth her time. Michael noticed, I'm sure, but he never addressed it. He had always avoided confrontation, and now that trait was allowing his wife to slowly erode his mother's dignity. I spoke to my daughter Sarah about it once, and she encouraged me to stand up for myself, but I couldn't bring myself to risk my relationship with my son and grandchildren. So I continued to smile, help, and support them financially, all while swallowing my growing resentment for the sake of family harmony. Little did I know that my years of silent suffering were building toward an explosion that would change everything. The preparations for Christmas dinner this year were more extensive than ever. I wanted everything to be perfect, especially since my sister and her husband were joining us after spending the previous 3 Christmases with their daughter in California. I started planning in November, creating detailed shopping lists and scheduling when each dish would be prepared. I spent days decorating the house carefully, placing every ornament on the tree, and hanging the stockings that I had personally knitted for each family member, including Amanda. The handmade gifts I had prepared throughout the year were beautifully wrapped and arranged under the tree. For Jacob, I had knitted a superhero blanket with his name embroidered in the corner. For Emma, I had restored and repainted the dollhouse that had once belonged to my daughter Sarah. The week before Christmas was a whirlwind of shopping, cleaning, and preliminary cooking. Despite the constant throbbing in my knees and back, I pushed through, determined to create another memorable holiday for my family. I prepared make-ahead dishes like cranberry sauce and pie crusts, leaving only the turkey and fresh vegetables for Christmas Day. The morning of Christmas arrived with a beautiful sunrise that painted the sky in shades of pink and gold. I was up at 5 putting the 20-pound turkey in the oven. As I worked on the stuffing and vegetable preparations, I hummed Christmas carols, imagining the children's delighted faces when they opened their presents. At 9 o'clock, just as I was preparing the potatoes, my phone rang. It was Amanda. "Theresa, I forgot to mention that Jacob has decided he doesn't like sweet potatoes anymore. Can you make regular mashed potatoes instead? And Emma is on a no-sugar kick, so could you do a sugar-free version of whatever dessert you're making?" I took a deep breath. "Amanda, I've already bought all the ingredients, and the sweet potato casserole is a tradition." "Well, if you want your grandchildren to actually eat, you might want to reconsider. Also, Michael's colleague Richard is vegetarian, and he might drop by for dessert. Can you make sure there's something substantial for him?" Before I could respond, she hung up. I stood there, potato peeler in hand, feeling overwhelmed. A vegetarian option hadn't been mentioned before, and most stores would be closed on Christmas Day. After taking a moment to collect myself, I grabbed my coat and headed out to the one supermarket I knew would be open for limited hours. The store was packed with other last-minute shoppers, and finding a parking spot took 15 minutes. My back was screaming in pain as I navigated the crowded aisles searching for ingredients to make additional dishes that hadn't been in my original plan. By the time I returned home, I was already exhausted, and it wasn't even noon. I received several calls from family members offering help, including my daughter Sarah, but I politely declined. I had always prided myself on hosting these dinners single-handedly, and I wasn't about to change that now despite the growing list of tasks. Michael arrived with his family an hour earlier than expected. Instead of offering to help, he immediately pointed out that I had forgotten to put out the special Christmas napkins they had given me last year. Amanda walked through my house like a health inspector, running her finger along shelves, checking for dust, and rearranging my table settings without asking. "The silverware goes on the outside, Theresa," she said loudly. "And these glasses have water spots. Don't you rinse with vinegar." I bit my tongue and continued working in the kitchen while Michael played with the children in the living room. Amanda hovered around me, commenting on my cooking techniques and suggesting improvements to recipes I had been perfecting for decades. When Sarah arrived with her husband Tom and their teenage son, I felt a wave of relief. Sarah immediately rolled up her sleeves and helped me finish the last-minute preparations, shooting concerned glances my way when she noticed how flustered I was becoming. My sister Jane and her husband Bill arrived next, bringing additional desserts and wine. The house was filled with delicious smells and the happy sounds of family reconnecting. Everyone seemed to be having a wonderful time, except me. I was running from task to task, trying to keep everything on schedule while accommodating all the last-minute changes. As I was setting out the appetizers, I overheard Amanda telling my sister about their recent vacation to the Bahamas, a trip I had partially funded after Amanda complained about being burnt out from motherhood. She was describing it as if they had paid for everything themselves, even mentioning how financially responsible they were for saving up for it. The afternoon progressed in a blur of cooking, serving, and cleaning up after each course. As dinner time approached and I was transferring food to serving dishes, a horrible realization hit me in the chaos of all the additional requests and preparations. I had completely forgotten to make my traditional apple pie. I had prepared the crust days ago, but with all the disruptions, I never got around to assembling and baking the actual pie. I frantically searched my pantry and found a package of store-bought cookies that someone had given me as a hostess gift at a previous gathering. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. With a sinking heart, I arranged them on my best crystal platter and covered them with a cloth napkin, hoping no one would be too disappointed. Before we begin, I'd like to propose a toast, my brother-in-law Bill announced as everyone settled around the dining table. To Theresa, whose love and hard work make these gatherings possible, we're blessed to have you. Everyone raised their glasses, and for a moment I felt appreciated. The table looked beautiful despite Amanda's improvements. The golden brown turkey was the centerpiece, surrounded by boats of gravy cranberry sauce, 3 different vegetable dishes, 2 types of potatoes, and fresh dinner rolls. The regular and vegetarian stuffing options sat at opposite ends of the table. "Everything looks wonderful, Mom," Sarah said, squeezing my hand under the table. The meal began pleasantly enough. Conversations flowed around the table as plates were filled and compliments on the food were offered. My sister Jane entertained everyone with stories from her recent Mediterranean cruise, while Sarah's son Jason talked about his college applications. Throughout the meal, I couldn't help but notice Amanda's behavior. Whenever I spoke, she would subtly interrupt or redirect the conversation. When I mentioned that the cranberry sauce was made from my mother's recipe, she quickly interjected, "Speaking of mothers, my mother just renovated her entire kitchen. It's absolutely gorgeous, all modern appliances and marble countertops." I let it slide, as I always did, but the comments continued. "Theresa, this turkey is actually not too dry this year," she said with a tight smile. "Did you finally use a meat thermometer like I suggested? The stuffing could use more sage," she commented later, despite everyone else praising its flavor. When Jacob accidentally spilled his water, Amanda sighed dramatically. "It's because these glasses are too big for children. I mentioned that to Theresa last year, but some people are set in their ways." Each comment was like a small paper cut, minor on its own, but painful as they accumulated. Still, I maintained my composure, determined not to let her ruin this special day. As the main course wound down, Emma looked up with eager eyes. "Is it time for Grandma's apple pie? It's my favorite part." Jacob clapped his hands. "Yes, with ice cream, please." All eyes turned to me, and I felt my face flush with embarrassment. "I'm so sorry, everyone. With all the preparations, I completely forgot to make the pie this year. But I do have some nice cookies we can have with coffee and tea." A moment of disappointed silence followed, quickly broken by my sister. "That's perfectly fine, Theresa. We've all had more than enough delicious food already." I was about to get up to clear the plates when I noticed Amanda's expression. She was looking at me with undisguised contempt, whispering something to Michael that made him frown and shake his head. "Did you say something, Amanda?" I asked, unable to stop myself. Amanda straightened up and looked around the table. "I just find it interesting that the one thing everyone looks forward to every year is the one thing you manage to forget." Her voice was sweet, but laced with venom. "Now, Amanda," Michael began, but she waved him off. "No, I think it needs to be said. We all walk on eggshells around Theresa as if she's some kind of saint for hosting dinner once a year. Meanwhile, she forgets the most important part, and we're all supposed to pretend it's fine." The table fell silent. I could feel everyone's discomfort radiating like heat. "Amanda, that's enough," my daughter Sarah said firmly. "Mom worked incredibly hard on this dinner." But Amanda was just getting started. "Hard work. Please, she forgot to put out the napkins we gave her. The vegetables are overcooked, and now no dessert. It's not like she has a job or anything else to occupy her time. What exactly was so difficult about remembering the one thing everyone actually wants?" I sat there stunned by the public humiliation. Every insecurity I had ever felt about my worth since retirement came flooding back. Was I really just a burden? A useless old woman who couldn't even get one meal right? "I think we should all just enjoy our coffee." Michael attempted, his face red with embarrassment. That's when Amanda delivered the final blow. She stood up, tossed her napkin on the table, and announced to the entire gathering, "You're such a useless old woman. I don't know why we bother coming here every year when you can't even handle a simple dinner anymore." The silence that followed was deafening. I saw the shock on everyone's faces, the embarrassment on Michael's, and the fury on Sarah's. But something strange was happening inside me. The pain of Amanda's words was there, yes, but beneath it was something else, a burning anger that had been suppressed for far too long. With shaking hands, but a surprisingly steady voice, I slowly stood up. Looking directly at Amanda, I said the words that had been building for years. "Then stop calling me when you need money." The room went completely still. Michael's jaw dropped. He had no idea that Amanda had been regularly calling me for financial help without telling him. Sarah gave a small, satisfied nod. My sister looked confused but supportive. Amanda's face drained of color before flooding crimson. "How dare you?" she hissed. "Michael, are you going to let her talk to me like that?" But Michael seemed frozen, looking back and forth between his wife and me, as if seeing us both for the first time. "We're leaving," Amanda announced, grabbing Emma from her chair. "Jacob, come on. Michael, get our coats." "Amanda, wait." Michael started, but she was already storming toward the door, dragging the confused children with her. "Either you come with us now or you can find another place to sleep tonight," she threatened loudly enough for everyone to hear. With an apologetic glance at me and the rest of the family, Michael followed his wife and children out the door, leaving behind a Christmas dinner that wasn't even finished. The remaining guests sat in shocked silence until my brother-in-law Bill finally said, "Well, I'd say those cookies sound pretty good right about now." It broke the tension, but nothing could heal the wound that had just been inflicted on our family Christmas. After everyone else had left, I collapsed onto my sofa, finally allowing the tears to flow freely. The house that had been filled with voices just hours before now felt cavernous and empty, decorated mockingly with cheerful Christmas ornaments that no longer matched my mood. Sarah had stayed behind to help clean up, and now she sat beside me, her arm around my shoulders. "Mom, I'm so sorry that happened," she said softly. "But I have to say, it's about time you stood up to her." I wiped my eyes with a tissue. I never wanted to cause problems between Michael and Amanda. I just couldn't take it anymore. "What did you mean about her calling you for money?" Sarah asked. "Has she been asking you for financial help?" The floodgates opened, and I found myself telling Sarah everything: the house down payment, the car loans, the child care assistance, the emergencies that always seemed to coincide with new designer purchases appearing on Amanda's social media. As I spoke, I realized just how much I'd been taken advantage of over the years. "Mom, that's over $75,000, Sarah exclaimed, horrified. "Does Michael know about all this?" "Some of it," I admitted. But Amanda always approached me directly, saying she didn't want to bother Michael with financial details when he was so busy with work. I thought I was helping them as a couple, but now I wonder if Michael even knows about half of it. Sarah shook her head in disbelief. "You need to talk to Michael about this. It's not right." As if on cue, my phone rang. It was Michael. I took a deep breath and answered, putting it on speaker so Sarah could hear. "Mom, how could you embarrass Amanda like that?" Michael's voice was tight with anger. "You completely ruined Christmas." "I ruined Christmas," I repeated incredulously. "Michael, your wife called me a useless old woman in front of our entire family. How do you think that made me feel? She was just upset about the pie. You know how much the kids look forward to it." "This isn't about pie, Michael. This is about years of disrespect and, quite frankly, financial exploitation." "What are you talking about?" He sounded genuinely confused. "Michael, in the past 7 years I have given you and Amanda over $75,000. The house down payment, the car, when yours broke down, the emergency credit card bills, the temporary help with childcare that's now been going on for 3 years, not to mention the countless hours of free babysitting while Amanda goes shopping or to the spa." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. When Michael finally spoke, his voice was much quieter. "I knew about the house and the car, but $75,000, that can't be right." "I have records of every transfer, Michael. Every time Amanda called crying about some financial emergency that couldn't wait until you got home from work. I always believed I was helping both of you." Another pause. "She told me her parents had started helping us again," he said slowly. "That they'd had a change of heart after Jacob was born." It was my turn to be silent as the implications sank in. Amanda had been lying to her husband about where their financial support was coming from. "Mom, I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything right now, Michael. But I'm done being Amanda's personal bank while being treated like I'm worthless. If she wants any further financial help from me, she needs to apologize and treat me with respect." "She'll never agree to that," Michael said, sounding defeated. "You know how she is about admitting she's wrong." "Then I guess she'll have to find another source of funds. I replied, surprising myself with my firmness. I love you and the children more than anything, but I can't continue to enable this behavior. I understand, he said after a moment. I need to go. Amanda's upset. After hanging up, I looked at Sarah feeling both drained and somehow lighter. Do you think I was too harsh? Not at all, Sarah assured me. If anything, you've been too accommodating for too long. It's time Michael knew the truth. That night after Sarah left, I cried myself to sleep, torn between standing my ground and fearing I might have permanently damaged my relationship with my son and grandchildren. My phone buzzed repeatedly with text messages from Amanda, alternating between guilt-tripping, "I can't believe you would ruin Christmas for your own grandchildren," and angry accusations, "You've always been jealous of my relationship with Michael." I turned my phone off and tried to sleep, but my mind kept replaying Amanda's words, "You're such a useless old woman." After a lifetime of caring for others as a nurse, a mother, a grandmother, was that all I was, now useless. The next morning I awoke to find several supportive messages from my sister and brother-in-law, as well as from Sarah. "We all saw how Amanda treated you," my sister wrote. "No one blames you for finally speaking up." It was comforting to know that others had seen the reality of the situation, but the pain of the public humiliation and the fear of losing my connection with my grandchildren remained. Little did I know that Amanda was just getting started with her campaign of revenge. The week after Christmas passed in uncomfortable silence. I sent a text to Michael asking about the children and received only a curt, "They're fine," in response. I tried to give everyone space to process what had happened, hoping that cooler heads would eventually prevail. I was wrong. On New Year's Eve, I received a phone call from my cousin Debbie. "Theresa, is everything okay between you and Amanda?" she asked hesitantly. "We had a disagreement at Christmas," I admitted. "Why do you ask?" "Well, she's been posting some concerning things on social media. She's saying you had some kind of breakdown at Christmas dinner and verbally attacked her in front of the children. She's implying that you might be experiencing cognitive decline." My blood ran cold. "She's saying what?" Debbie sent me screenshots of Amanda's posts. There I was, portrayed as an unstable, possibly senile woman who had exploded with rage over a minor dessert issue, traumatizing my grandchildren in the process. According to Amanda's narrative, she had been nothing but supportive and patient with my increasing confusion and memory issues over the past few years. The comments section was filled with sympathetic responses, people offering Amanda support for dealing with such a difficult situation with an aging parent. Some even suggested facilities that could help with the transition when home care was no longer feasible. I was horrified. Not only was Amanda spreading vicious lies, but she was also setting the groundwork to potentially have me declared incompetent. As a retired nurse, I understood exactly what she was doing, and it terrified me. When I tried to call Michael, my call went straight to voicemail. I left a message asking him to please talk to me about what Amanda was posting online, but he never called back. Instead, I received a text. "Amanda has decided it's best if the children don't visit for a while. She says they're confused and upset about what happened at Christmas." Just like that, I was cut off from my grandchildren. No explanation of when or if I would see them again. No acknowledgement of the bond we had formed through countless hours of caregiving and love. I was simply removed from their lives as if I had never mattered at all. The isolation might have been bearable if it had ended there, but Amanda was just warming up. The following week, I learned that she had been calling my friends and neighbors, expressing concern about my mental state and suggesting they keep an eye on me for erratic behavior. Several longtime friends called me confused and concerned by Amanda's claims. "She said you've been giving away large sums of money impulsively," my friend Martha told me. "She's worried you're being taken advantage of by scammers." The irony would have been laughable if it weren't so painful. The only person taking financial advantage of me had been Amanda herself. Then came the incident at church. I had been attending the same congregation for over 30 years, finding comfort in the familiar rituals and the community of faith. One Sunday in January, I was sitting in my usual pew when I saw Amanda walking down the aisle with Jacob and Emma. They had never attended my church before. My heart leapt at the sight of my grandchildren, but the feeling quickly faded when I realized what was happening. Amanda led the children to a pew on the opposite side of the church, deliberately within my line of sight, but far enough away that I couldn't easily approach them. Throughout the service, she would lean down and whisper to them, occasionally pointing in my direction. When I tried to approach after the service, Amanda quickly ushered the children away, loudly saying, "Come on, kids, let's go before Grandma gets upset again." Several church members who witnessed this looked at me with confusion and pity. Amanda had succeeded in making me appear like the unstable one, the grandmother who couldn't be trusted around her own grandchildren. That afternoon, I received a call from Amanda's mother, a woman I had met only twice before at formal family gatherings. "Theresa," she began without preamble, "I'm very concerned about the way you've been treating my daughter. Amanda has been nothing but respectful to you, and this is how you repay her kindness, by embarrassing her in front of the entire family and then spreading lies about her asking you for money." I was so stunned I could barely respond. "Mrs. Blackwood, with all due respect, that is not what happened. Amanda has been—" "Save it," she interrupted. "I know my daughter. She would never behave the way you're describing. I think it's time you took a long, hard look at yourself and considered how your behavior is affecting your son's marriage." After she hung up, I sat in my kitchen trembling with a mixture of anger and despair. Not only had Amanda turned my son against me, cut me off from my grandchildren, and poisoned my community against me, but she had also enlisted her own family in her campaign of isolation and gaslighting. The final blow came a few days later when I received my credit card statement. Among the usual charges for groceries and utilities were several large transactions I didn't recognize, expensive purchases at high-end department stores, and a spa resort totaling over $4,000. When I called the credit card company, I learned that a secondary card had been issued on my account 2 years earlier. The name on that card, Amanda Reynolds. I was stunned. I vaguely remembered Amanda asking to use my credit card information for an emergency purchase when her card was declined, but I had never authorized a permanent secondary card. When I explained this to the representative, they immediately flagged it as fraud and began an investigation. That evening, I received a furious call from Michael. "Mom, what are you doing? Amanda just had her card declined at the grocery store." "Michael, did you know that Amanda has had a secondary card on my credit account for 2 years without my knowledge or permission?" The silence on the other end of the line told me everything I needed to know. "She spent over $20,000 on my card in the past 2 years, Michael. That's fraud." "She said you offered to help with expenses." He finally said, his voice small. "She said you wanted to make things easier for us." "By giving her unlimited access to my credit without my knowledge, Michael, please. You're smarter than this." After a long pause, he said, "She's threatening to take the kids and go to her parents if I don't fix this. She says she'll tell them I knew about the financial arrangement all along and approved it. Mom, I can't lose my children." My heart broke for my son, who was now beginning to see the manipulation he had been living with. But I also knew I couldn't continue enabling this toxic behavior. "Michael, I love you, but I cannot and will not be financially abused any longer. If Amanda wants access to my funds in the future, she needs to apologize for her behavior and agree to family counseling." "She'll never agree to that," he said, sounding defeated. "Then I guess we're at an impasse," I replied, surprised by my own firmness, "because I will not back down this time." 2 days later, I received a lengthy email from Amanda. She wrote that she would consider allowing me to see my grandchildren again under certain conditions. I would need to write a public apology for my outburst at Christmas dinner, retract my false claims about financial support, and agree to a new financial arrangement where I would provide a set monthly contribution to my grandchildren's expenses. It was emotional blackmail, plain and simple. She was using my love for Jacob and Emma as leverage to continue extracting money from me. For the first time, I saw with perfect clarity just how toxic this relationship had become. Instead of responding to her email, I sat down and began documenting every financial transaction between Amanda and me over the past 7 years. The record of exploitation was even worse than I had remembered. After a sleepless night reviewing bank statements and credit card records, I called my friend Diane, who happened to be a family therapist. Over coffee at her kitchen table, I poured out the whole story, showing her Amanda's social media posts, the credit card statements, and the manipulative email demanding money in exchange for access to my grandchildren. "Theresa," Diane said after listening patiently, "what you're describing is financial abuse, emotional manipulation, and what we call parental alienation, using the children as pawns. This is serious." "I don't know what to do," I admitted. "I miss my grandchildren terribly, but I can't keep enabling Amanda's behavior." "The first thing you need to do is protect yourself financially," Diane advised. "Make sure all your accounts are secured. Then document everything, every interaction, every text message, every financial request, and consider consulting with an attorney about grandparents' rights." I followed her advice, scheduling an appointment with my financial advisor the very next day. He was horrified when I showed him the extent of the loans I had provided over the years. "Mrs. Reynolds, this is concerning," he said, reviewing my records. "These withdrawals have significantly impacted your retirement security. If this pattern continues, you could find yourself in real financial jeopardy within a few years." Together, we worked out exactly how much I had given to Michael and Amanda, over $75,000 in direct financial assistance, not including the value of childcare and other non-monetary support. He helped me secure all my accounts with new passwords and removed the secondary credit card that had been issued to Amanda. Next, I consulted with an attorney about grandparents' rights in our state. The news wasn't encouraging. "Unless there's clear evidence of parental unfitness, courts tend to defer to parents' decisions about who their children can see," the attorney explained. "However, the financial abuse angle is concerning and could potentially be leveraged if it came to a legal battle." Armed with professional advice and a growing sense of my own strength, I drafted a formal letter to both Michael and Amanda. I outlined the financial support I had provided over the years, expressed my deep love for my grandchildren, and stated my terms for moving forward: no further financial support without an acknowledgement of past behavior and an agreement to family counseling. I sent the letter by certified mail so they couldn't claim they hadn't received it. 3 days later, Michael showed up at my door alone. "Can we talk?" he asked, looking more tired and stressed than I had ever seen him. Over tea at my kitchen table, Michael examined the financial records I had compiled. His face grew increasingly troubled as he realized the extent of Amanda's deception. "I had no idea it was this much," he said finally. "She told me your help was occasional, just for emergencies. I never would have allowed this if I'd known." "Why do you think she came to me directly instead of discussing these emergencies with you?" I asked gently. He was quiet for a long moment. "Because there were no emergencies," he finally acknowledged. "It was just her shopping, her expensive tastes." He looked up at me, his eyes haunted. "Mom, I think she has a problem. The spending, it's compulsive. We're drowning in debt despite my good salary, and I never understood why until now." That conversation marked a turning point. For the first time, Michael was seeing the reality of his marriage without the filter of Amanda's manipulation. He admitted that things had been tense between them for years, but he had been too afraid of losing his children to confront the issues. As we talked, my doorbell rang. To my astonishment, there stood Jacob and Emma with Michael's best friend Dave waiting in a car at the curb. "Dave picked them up from school for me," Michael explained. "Amanda thinks they're at a play date. I thought you should see them. It's not right what she's doing." The joy of holding my grandchildren again brought tears to my eyes. We spent 2 precious hours together baking cookies and reading their favorite stories, as if no time had passed at all. When it was time for them to leave, I held them a little tighter than usual, not knowing when I would see them again. "Mom, I'm going to fix this," Michael promised as they left. "I don't know how yet, but I will." 2 days later, I received a frantic call from Michael. Amanda had discovered the secret visit through a chance comment from Emma about Grandma's cookies. She had flown into a rage, threatening to take the children and move back to her parents' home in another state. "She says if I ever go behind her back again, she'll file for divorce and full custody," Michael said, his voice shaking. "She says her parents will pay for the best lawyers, and with your mental instability, no judge would grant you visitation." The threat was clear: if Michael continued to allow me access to the children, Amanda would take them away from both of us. That weekend, my sister organized a family meeting at her house. Sarah, my brother-in-law, my sister and her husband, and even a few cousins who had witnessed Amanda's behavior over the years, gathered to discuss the situation. Michael attended alone, having told Amanda he was going to a work event. One by one, family members shared their observations of Amanda's disrespectful behavior toward me, the materialistic values she was instilling in the children, and the isolation tactics they had witnessed. Michael listened, sometimes defending Amanda out of habit, but mostly absorbing the perspectives of people who loved him and wanted the best for his family. "You have two choices," my brother-in-law finally said. "You can continue enabling behavior that's destroying your mother financially and emotionally, or you can draw a line and demand change. But understand this: if you choose the first option, you're not just hurting your mother. You're teaching your children that it's acceptable to treat people this way." Michael left the meeting deep in thought. The next day, he called to tell me he had scheduled an appointment with a marriage counselor and informed Amanda that their attendance was non-negotiable if she wanted their marriage to continue. Amanda's response was to escalate dramatically. The following week, I received notice that she had filed a restraining order against me, claiming I had made threatening phone calls and appeared at their house uninvited multiple times. The allegations were completely fabricated, but they achieved her goal legally, keeping me away from my grandchildren while painting me as dangerous and unstable. When I called Michael in shock, he was equally stunned. "She filed it without telling me," he said. "She forged my signature on the documents. Mom, this has gone too far." That day, Michael finally took a stand. He contacted the court to refute the restraining order, providing phone records showing there had been no threatening calls and security camera footage from their home, proving I had not shown up uninvited. The restraining order was quickly dismissed, but the damage to my reputation in our community had already been done. The dismissal of the restraining order proved to be the breaking point for Amanda. Confronted with evidence of her deception by both the court and her husband, she had nowhere left to hide. Michael presented her with an ultimatum: enter therapy for her spending addiction and participate in family counseling, or he would file for divorce and present evidence of her financial fraud to the court. Faced with the potential loss of both her lifestyle and her leverage, Amanda finally agreed to seek help. It wasn't a happy resolution, but it was the beginning of a path toward healing for our fractured family. 6 months after that fateful Christmas dinner, I sat in a family therapy session with Michael and Amanda. The journey to this point had been difficult and painful, but necessary. The therapist, Dr. Matthews, had been skillfully guiding us through the complex dynamics of our family relationships. "Theresa," Dr. Matthews said during one session, "can you share how it felt when Amanda called you useless at Christmas?" I took a deep breath, looking directly at my daughter-in-law. It felt like all the years of caring for others as a nurse, as a mother, as a grandmother meant nothing. Like I was only valuable when I was giving money or providing free childcare, but otherwise disposable. Amanda stared at her hands, unable to meet my gaze. She had been resistant to therapy, at first attending only because Michael had made it a condition of their marriage continuing. But over time, small changes had begun to emerge. "Amanda, would you like to respond to that?" Dr. Matthews prompted gently. I shouldn't have said that," she admitted reluctantly. "It was cruel." It wasn't a full apology, but it was more acknowledgement than I had ever received from her before. Through these sessions, we had uncovered the roots of Amanda's behavior: her parents' conditional love based on appearances and achievements, her shopping addiction as a way to fill emotional voids, and her resentment of the close relationship between Michael and me. Her individual therapy had revealed a shopping addiction stemming from deep insecurities about her self-worth. Without the constant validation of new purchases and material status symbols, she felt invisible and worthless feelings she had projected onto me through her cruel comments. Michael had been attending both couples' counseling with Amanda and some of our family sessions. He had finally found his voice, no longer allowing Amanda to manipulate him with threats about taking the children. With the help of his own therapist, he had established firm boundaries around family finances, taking control of their accounts, and setting up a strict budget that Amanda had to follow. The path to rebuilding my relationship with my grandchildren was slow but steady. At first, I was allowed supervised visits with Michael present. Gradually, as trust was rebuilt, I began having them for regular Saturday afternoons. Jacob and Emma showed remarkable resilience, quickly falling back into our familiar, loving routine despite the months of separation. Financial boundaries were perhaps the most significant change. I made it clear that there would be no more handouts or loans. Instead, I established education funds for Jacob and Emma that could only be used for their schooling. Any other financial support would be given directly to specific needs like children's medical expenses rather than as cash to Amanda. The most meaningful change came in the way Amanda began to take responsibility for her actions. It started small, a text message thanking me for watching the children, a genuine compliment on a meal I had prepared. There were still moments of tension and setbacks when old patterns emerged, but they became less frequent as the months passed. By the time the next Christmas approached, our family dynamics had shifted dramatically. Amanda had been in recovery for her shopping addiction for 5 months, attending regular support group meetings and working with her therapist on the underlying emotional issues. Michael had found new strength in standing up for what was right, even when it was difficult. And I had discovered that setting boundaries wasn't selfish. It was necessary for healthy relationships. We decided to create new traditions that year. Instead of me hosting the entire dinner alone, everyone contributed a dish. Amanda and I worked together on the dessert, not an apple pie, but a new recipe we had found together symbolizing our fresh start. The children were involved in the preparations, learning the value of working together as a family. As I watched Amanda teaching Emma how to measure ingredients, I reflected on the painful journey that had brought us to this point. The woman who had once called me useless was now making a genuine, if imperfect, effort to change her behavior. She would never be the daughter-in-law I had hoped for, but we had found a way to coexist with mutual respect, if not warm affection. During these months of conflict and reconciliation, I had also discovered parts of myself that had been submerged under decades of caregiving. With the time and energy no longer spent on managing Amanda's demands, I had joined a book club, started volunteering at a literacy center, and even begun dating a kind widower from my church. The journey taught me that love doesn't mean being a doormat. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and others is to say no to behavior that harms. By standing up for myself that Christmas, I had not only reclaimed my own dignity, but also helped my son see the unhealthy dynamics in his marriage. The road ahead wouldn't be perfect. Amanda would have good days and bad days in her recovery. Michael would sometimes fall back into people-pleasing habits, and I would occasionally find myself tempted to overextend to avoid conflict. But we now had tools, boundaries, and a shared commitment to creating healthier family relationships. As I look back on that painful Christmas confrontation, I realize that sometimes it takes a moment of breaking for true healing to begin. By standing up and speaking my truth, I set in motion a chain of events that ultimately led to greater authenticity and health for our entire family. Have you ever had to stand up to a family member who was taking advantage of your kindness? How did you handle it? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more about navigating complex family relationships. And remember, sometimes the strongest thing you can do is simply speak your truth. Thank you for listening, and may your own family journeys lead to healing and peace.